2 years ago, I packed my car, old Chevette, 84. Drove it till the engine smoked, hitched a ride through San Antonio. Got a job, tending bar, let a senorita break my heart. I wanna sink my feet into some Illinois clay, walk along the cornfield in the cool of the day, get a dog and chase.
Yo, everybody, welcome to the very, very first CommonGround Podcast.
Hopefully it's not the last.
Yes, I agree. I do agree with that. So yeah, we're learning our way through this, and very excited to be able to offer this to everyone for a multitude of reasons. We want to educate landowners on everything land. We're going to have, throughout the duration of the podcast, professionals from the hunting industry, from the farming industry, farm management, commodity trading, you name it. That's what we're here to do. Educate everybody in a space that seemingly has very, very little resources for people at times.
I would agree. And it's pretty exciting for us. Never did we think we'd be doing a podcast and be sitting here right now at the Pear Tree Studios, Fulton County, God's country. But now
God bless Fulton County. God bless Fulton County.
Yeah, just a magnificent place, and this is where it all started, which is kind of unique and in itself. But really excited for the opportunity. But the goal was going in, hey, how do we educate and inform and bring technology into a space that otherwise has not yet been disrupted? And I can speak for both myself and I think for you, Brad, that I never thought in a million years we'd be doing a podcast, but everybody was like, you got to do a podcast, you got to do a podcast, you got to do a podcast, because once you tell the story, once you show the vision, once you get it out there, people are really going to understand what you're trying to do and how it benefits everybody across the space. So just blessed and super excited to be here at the Pear Tree Studios. I'll keep plugging that, but nobody's going to know what that means, not till like episode 6 or 7.
Well, and to be brutally honest, like, I am probably the worst public speaker you're ever going to be around.
But you're always brutally honest. And
so I'm going to just kind of work my way through this, and we're going to see how this goes. So I'll get better, I'm sure, as it goes. And
we hope so. Yeah, we definitely hope you're going to get better at
you and me both. We've got tons of stuff to talk about, though.
We do have a lot to talk about, but first, it might be good to start with some context, telling the story. Mm-hmm. CommonGround Podcast, where did all this start? What was the catalyst, and why are we sitting here today? Mm-hmm. So you want me to kick that off and kind of give the viewers a little bit of context?
I think that would be appropriate. Start from the very beginning, man. I mean, we're going on 6 years of this, damn near anyway. And
so 6 years from an idea, mm-hmm. But it takes a while to get an idea off the ground, and pretty cool. It all started here in Fulton County, Illinois. Very blessed to be a successful entrepreneur across the board. Got my background in real estate, construction, mechanical companies, and was very fortunate enough in 2013 to buy my first farm. And just sole purpose was, hey, space to get away, love the outdoors, get the kids off the iPads, want to be able to hunt, fish, camp, four-wheel, and, closed on the farm, super excited, come out after closing, and all of a sudden talk to my first neighbor that I meet, well, who's going to farm your ground? And it was a thought that never even crossed my mind. I bought a farm for a hobby. And then it was all of a sudden, okay, you're a businessman, you're an entrepreneur. Oh, you've got a farm. Well, who's going to farm it?
But dude, listen, like this, it's I would expect very, very standard across the board that, I've sold, a countless number of farms to people, and I don't even think it registers with them. I can tell people, hey, here's what the farm is currently bringing in cash rent. Here's your ROI. What's the farm worth? Here's what I believe it's worth. It's priced at that. Me and the current landowner decided on this price. Here's where we're marketing it at. But there's not a whole lot of questions after that. And I believe that part of that is because people have never known any sort of a resource to understand really what they had. That
there's a difference between stupidity and ignorance. I'm not a stupid guy. I was an ignorant guy. I was ignorant going into buying my first piece of farm ground, not realizing that, I had 50 acres of tillable. I just bought it as a hobby farm. And then all of a sudden, when the neighbor posed the question, he said, no, you don't want, the old neighbor, farming it. I'd go talk to the new guy. So, after dropping a card in the mailbox, I wound up talking to the neighbor and said, hey, what is your thoughts on, farming my ground? He said, hey, no problem. Let's do a 50-50. You're going to make out the best. No problem. Me being none the wiser, I said, hey, let's do it. Shook hands, went about my business, and it was fine. But after a while, you start doing the math, you start getting grain bills, you start getting fertilizer bills, seed bills. Hey, when do you want to sell your grain? And it dawned on me very quickly that I don't have any business being a 50-50 partner in a farming operation. And, it was at that point, I said, why don't I just do a straight cash rental? I want to know my ROI. I want to know my return. I want guaranteed income. And
I would say that the vast majority of folks who are buying farms or own farms, they're in a cash rental agreement. Typically.
Yeah, there's roughly 911 million acres farmed in the United States. About 45 to 50%, depending on the statistics, are rented. I would say the vast majority is under cash rental.
That's what I'm saying. And so, a lot of people don't have to deal with what you dealt with on the 50-50.
When I get a call to say, hey, when do you want to sell your grain? I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. What do you mean? I don't watch the grain future markets. I don't know what I'm doing. So the cash rental agreement that's probably why it's the most popular, is because it takes the burden off the landowner. It's just, here's your payment, here's your ROI.
No variables, you know what you're getting.
You know what you're getting.
If it rains, great. If it doesn't rain, you're getting the same.
The burden is on the farmer. So I talked to the farmer, say, hey, straight cash rental agreement. He shoots me a price. Okay. I don't make any quick decisions. Let me think about it. Let me do my research. Well, you know me.
He's the slowest methodical thinking human being that I've honestly ever met.
Really?
Pretty darn close, to be honest. And I'm thankful to have been around you for as long as I have, because it's helped me out in a bunch of things. But over the last, what are we at, 30 years that I've known you?
Yeah.
It's been consistent that
slow and steady.
Slow and methodical.
Slow and steady wins the race. We inch forward, race forward an inch at a time. But when I got that offer, it was, let's take a step back. Let's analyze things. First question is, what should a current reasonable rate of return on farm ground bring? Am I achieving that through this cash rental rate? Okay, maybe not. So then I'm going to dig in. Well, where do I start to dig in? Okay, what resources are available for landowners? Not a whole lot. I found that out very quickly.
Not on the agricultural side.
Especially on the price discovery, on the leasing side of things. Mm-hmm. You get your university ag extension that posts data out there, but I quickly found that is stale data. It's based off of surveys that aren't always factual, and it's more often than not a year late by the time it's available for public consumption, and it's certainly not keeping up with commodity prices and input prices. So, first step, get a GPS, see how many acres I actually have. Mm-hmm. And okay, turns out I've got 2 more acres than I thought I had. That's a big win. Perfect. Then it's, okay, what kind of soil am I working with here? Because that's a big part of valuing farmland in the state and across the country is what soils am I working with? So did some soil samples, got those back. And then I have to go through this arduous task of sourcing all this fragmented data out there that is stale and outdated. But I compiled a little bit of an idea of what I thought was a good, fair rental rate. So when I get this data back and compile it, okay, what's my next best step? Well, why don't we talk to the people that live in the trenches? And, you know, I grew up, Morton, still live there today. And a lot of my buddies grew up farming, still farm today. So took a meeting. Hey, I want to meet with you. Hey, I want to meet with you. Hey, I want to meet with you. So I sat down with them, met with this guy, met with this guy, met with this guy. Everybody paid a different rental rate. And me being an entrepreneur, I realized farming is a business. You might be a 1,000-acre farmer, you might be a 3,000-acre farmer, you might be a 10,000-acre grower. And everybody runs at a different risk profile.
Sure.
Everybody runs at a different overhead structure. People are buying inputs at different scales. And everybody was willing to pay a little different rate. And when I say little, it wasn't that little, but you get a 220, a 240, a 260. And, you know, it really just stuck with me. You know, my background's real estate. Like that's what I love. That's what I do. I own duplexes. I own rent houses. I flip houses. And for some odd reason, it just stuck with me for weeks that a massive industry as large as leasing farm ground. I mean, it's massive. It's like 70, 80 billion a year annually. No price transparency, no price discovery, no competitive nature. And I just found it uniquely odd that a tenant farmer was telling me what my ground was worth versus me telling them what it should rent for.
But it's the analogy that, I mean, you and me have discussed forever. I think you came up with it originally, and it is simply if an individual owns rental houses or condos or apartments or anything, like you don't allow the tenants to tell you what they're going to pay you.
No.
To live in your home. So, like, I'm very confused why historically the tenants have been able to tell the landowner, here's what I'm willing to give you. And like in some cases, it's not always wrong. But we've seen now like a multitude of instances where like the landowner just doesn't know any better. And so whatever they're told is what they get. And I love your analogy that when you ultimately came up with this idea years ago, you had the conversation with the tenant who was, you know, trying to still shortchange you, in my opinion, on the cash rent here. And he came out and said, well, you have a lot of deer damage. Well, sure. We're in Fulton County, Illinois, arguably one of the best deer hunting counties in the world, I would say.
Well, you know that because I kill most of the big deer in Fulton County, not you.
Not true. But yeah, I promise not true. And we could take that to any jury, I would say. But regardless, like, you know, if that farmer told you, he goes, I can only pay this because of the deer damage, and you ask a simple question, what was your yield last year? And he tells you, well, the farm yielded 210 bushel corn. And you mentioned to him, well, that's after the deer ate it. The deer didn't eat the corn out of the auger wagon.
Yes.
So,
but in his defense, maybe he was a smaller farmer. Maybe he wasn't, maybe that's the max he could pay and still be profitable.
100% agree.
So
100%.
It's an individualistic basis on what every farming operation can pay. And the other thing we got into, you know, because I was like, hey, call Brad, he's a land broker, very successful. Brad, I might need to look at a different farmer that can pay more. How do I go about doing it? Mm-hmm. Well,
and my answer, honestly, like as many farms as I had sold up to that point, I couldn't tell you a single new landowner who called and said, hey, I'm dissatisfied with the cash rental rate on this property. Can you help me find a new farmer? And so it took me back a little bit. I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, well, what Chris is asking should be a very valid question for anyone who owns a very, very expensive, valuable asset and ground of any sort. And so when he asked me, Brad, do you know any farmers in, this area of Fulton County that I could discuss with? And I tell you, well, yeah, I mean, I've got a couple that we could talk to, but I guess your best bet is probably like make a flyer, print it out, go take it up to Casey's uptown, maybe hit 3 or 4 of those. Just say, hey, I'm looking for a new farmer. But realistically, it's very, very, very antiquated and challenging to, like, what is the resource there, right? To find a tenant.
And I think that was the final nail in the coffin for me, because I was going down this journey as a landowner of, I bought a farm. Awesome. Oh, now I've got part ownership in a 50-50 relationship. Now I'm looking at cash renting, and I'm not getting the results that I think I should out of my current farmer. So I want to expand the network. Was the cash rental rate that he offered you less than what you were making if you were 50-50 in it?
No,
it's about the same.
Equivalent.
It was equivalent. So, I mean, for me, it was, okay, I can make the same and make no decisions. But after talking to a different demographic of farmers 60 miles away in our hometown, they were willing to pay more. And it was like, well, why are you willing to pay more than this guy? And it got the wheels turning of, is the farming industry antiquated? Is it hyper localized? Why can a 120 PI in Fulton County rent different than a 120 PI over here with similar yields? And then the nail in the coffin was when I talked to you and you're like, I maybe put a ad in the diner, maybe throw an ad in, the Casey's. And I was just blown away, because how is an 80, 70, 60, 90, depending on the year, $1 billion a year industry so antiquated? It's done on a handshake. There's no price discovery. There's no available resources for a landowner who owns all these valuable assets to know what they're truly worth. Mm-hmm. And, you know me, I sat on it, and I called you and I said, hey, let's have lunch. We met Jonah's Oyster Bar. We had lunch. We talked about it. And I said, this doesn't make sense. I have a real estate background. I know how residential real estate works. I know how commercial real estate works. Like, you can't rent 800 square feet of office space mm-hmm. without a contract, a several page contract. But yet people are leasing out their farm ground on a handshake mm-hmm. for $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year with no price discovery or transparency. And that's when I looked at Brad and I said, we can upend and change the game for the better for both farmers and landowners. Because the feedback I got after talking to the farmers that were shooting these prices at me, one thing that sticks in their craw above all else is, whether you like it or not, every industry constantly consolidates. They constantly consolidate.
Well, I think the nature of business. In the agricultural industry, if you're not growing, the math simply doesn't work.
That was really funny. Really funny.
Too many variables, honestly. Yes. And the commodity market is a roller coaster, almost now more than ever, probably. Yeah. And so even I think back to the time that the day you called me, and corn was probably $5. Okay.
I think it was like $3.90.
Okay.
Maybe $3.90 to $4.10.
Okay. So it was less even.
Yeah, it was a lot.
And so at that point in time, maybe it wasn't that out of line, Well, but it's a constant moving target.
But you had aggressive farmers. Like I was talking to progressive growing operations that had more mouths to feed in their family.
Sure.
That they had kids coming into the operation. They needed to expand their acres.
Sure.
So they were willing to say, okay, I could make this margin on farming that at X amount of dollars. Or I can cut that by 10 or 15%, offer more in rent, spread my overhead out over more acres, and bring my son into the business.
Sure.
So what I found was every farming operation was allowed to make their own decision. And the other thing that you and I have found out and talked about at length is 50, 60 years ago, you used to have farmers that farmed in a 10-mile radius, maybe 15. Now, 45, 50, 60. They're keeping those machines running across the board. And, you know, at the crux of it all was when we were at lunch, it was, why can we not create the Airbnb meets eBay of farmland, an open, transparent marketplace? And what was my original logo and slogan? What did we want to do?
Maximize your yield.
We wanted to maximize yield. We wanted to help farmers grow.
Yep.
And we wanted to help increase landowner ROI. And we realized if we could do both those things, that we would have a successful dual-sided marketplace. And I guess it all comes full circle because it started with me buying this farm. Now my man cave, my dartboard is sitting on a couch. My pool table is covered up and has a camera and lights on it. I've got a producer sitting in a corner scrolling on his phone that I'm paying. And here we are. But it all comes back to the ultimate goal of educating, informing, and providing enough information to provide farmers an opportunity to grow, because we thought we were going to get burned at the stake.
How do you go find more ground to farm?
I don't know. I'm not a farmer, but every farmer I talk to was like, no, I mean, you got to hear about it. It's got to be an under the table that somebody's got to die and you got to have a connection. But all these farmers are starving to grow their operation, but they don't have a good way of doing it. And I saw this as a win-win-win. And I've said all along, if we can help farmers grow their operations, if we can provide a fair rate of return for the landowner, and we get compensated for doing so, we are going to have a successful dual-sided marketplace, and everybody wins. And that is so rare in business, to where all three parties involved win. And you know, there's going to be a naysayer out there and says, well, some farmer's going to lose his ground. Maybe. He has an opportunity to bid on it. He has an opportunity to bid on it.
And that's why we've been so diligent about, through the, you know, as we've grown this and designed this platform that has been very, very labor intensive, that we were adamant from the very beginning that high bid is not going to win. We are not going to allow a specific tenant to come in, pay more than what he should be, pillage the ground, not put back into it. And so we have, from day one, set up the platform to that it's ultimately up to the landowner. That high bidder does not win by default in any way, shape, or form. And we want to do that for the aspect that we're very, very adamant about being stewards of the ground. And if you're a steward of the ground,
yes,
the ground is going to continue to kick back what it's supposed to be. Kicking back. If you're not, then you're going to run into issues down the road. And it's not what we want. We want the best farmers in the area, in any specific region, connected with landowners. And, you know, I hate to say it, but like the best tenants are going to be the winners here.
Yeah.
And it's that simple.
I agree. It might be the best. I mean, best is a relative term. I mean, it's the best tenant. But
sure,
what I like about what we do is empowering the landowner.
Yeah, giving them...
It's their asset. They purchased it. They inherited it. Whatever the case may be, it's their asset. And I would say 80 to 90% of the time, high bid does not get it.
I mean, statistically, you are spot on.
And that's for a multitude of reasons. You might have a 75-year-old widowed lady that looks at her bids and says, yeah, this guy bid $390. Mm-hmm. This guy bid $380. And they go through the farmer profiles. They go through, what we call the farmer resume. They look at the financial solvency and evidence that, okay, these guys can pay. But maybe that widow says, you know what? The guy that was $10 less, he's 35.
Mm-hmm.
He's 35.
Yep.
The other guy's 60. I want to give a shot to a young farmer and help grow his operation. Mm. Awesome. It's your decision. You pick whoever you want. It's your asset.
Yeah.
You do what you want with it. If you want to take $10 less an acre, 15, 20, I don't care. And then we get, the other people that say, hey, the high bid, he lives 40 minutes away. Guy was $15 less. He lives 5 minutes away. He's going to drive past my farm every day. He's going to pick the trash out of the ditch. He's going to mow the waterways. He's going to be a good steward. So I'm going to take the lower guy. Awesome. Mm-hmm. All we're doing is educating, informing landowners, allowing price discovery in a transparent marketplace for transactions to take place, and empower landowners to gain access to more qualified growers, and provide all these farming operations that are hungry to grow an opportunity to bid on stuff they never otherwise would have got a kick at.
Well, and you talking about the older lady, just in context of sorts. Like, I mean, there's one in particular, and you know exactly which one I'm talking about. And I'm not going to name any names, but it was one of the very first leases that we ran through the platform, back even in the cash rent days. That yes. She was a elderly lady. Her husband had passed. She didn't have a whole lot of help, and was very much on a set income. And her income consisted of
and farm ground.
And yeah, the majority of it came from the farm ground. Mm-hmm. And so her son, who was fairly tech savvy, had reached out to us. We went and met with them, sat down. We took this farm, and it still gives me chills. Like I like almost tear up at times when I talk about this, because she calls like physically, emotionally bawling that we just changed her life in the aspect that she was getting $220 an acre. We're able to bring in a very, very qualified farmer at $380 an acre. It was a 120 acre farm. Mm-hmm. Just a square 120 pretty much. And it's like, I mean, she is so emotional, and it's one of those things that I wish we could have done this sooner for her.
Well, and that was when we knew what we were doing was making a difference, because you've got a landowner on one side of the equation that's bawling and happy, and we've changed the trajectory of
it almost brings tears to my eyes.
Last years of her life. And you had a young, aggressive farmer that was so thankful that he was given the opportunity to even bid on this and get awarded the bid. Mm-hmm. And like, when we walk away from a deal like that, it's like, we're doing our job. Mm-hmm. We're doing our job. We're doing it well. We've got a happy landowner. We've got a happy farmer. So,
and I actually spoke with her maybe 2 months ago, and she said that her son had driven her past the farm, and she's like, basically said, the crops were just starting to grow. So it would have been 6 weeks ago. Yep. And she said that she has never seen that field that she owns in better shape. That she's like, Brad, the corn is growing. There's no weeds. It's beautiful. Thank you. So you connected us with a guy who not only was able and willing to pay more, but is like, she can tell
Absolutely.
from, very not knowing, but the field is taken care of.
Yeah.
And it looked better than she told me it looked better than it ever has.
Well, everybody says, oh, you're just out for high bid, you're out for high bid. And, people are going to bid high and rape the ground and everything that we do is to ensure, the quality of the soils are maintained. That is in every single contract. Every farmer has to provide the landowner on an annual basis evidence that soil is being maintained or improved on an annual basis through soil tests. And maybe people out there don't know, but once a landowner selects a winning farmer, it gets kicked back to that farmer electronically to say, congratulations, your bid has been accepted. Preview and accept the contract. And it says right in the contract, annual basis, and everybody says, oh, well, how do you prove that? Well, how do you prove it with a handshake? It's way better than a handshake. It's in the contract. We're getting a soil test done. You're going to show me every year that you're maintaining or increasing the quality of this soil.
Or evidence and data. It went in there. It's really easy.
And what's great is you're a big ag guy, not farm, but outdoors and ag and all about sustainability, and you grow food for the deer. And, we're sitting out here at my farm at Pear Tree Studios, and, we love the outdoors, and we're all about conservation and preservation. Passionate about it. So we knew going in that sustainability, preservation, soil conservation, that was going to have to be a big part of this. So we folded that in. Is it bulletproof? Absolutely not. Nothing's bulletproof nowadays, but it's better than the handshake.
Absolutely.
So, and what I find interesting is you just spoke to, well, that was back in the Cash Red days. Well, yeah, for those of you out there who, it's the CommonGround Podcast. We are Common Ground. This started out as solely cashrent.com. And that's all we did was we leased out farm ground. But as we got into it and we started dealing with more absentee landowners, they said, hey, well, I live in Florida. Okay, well, would you want to gain an extra, revenue stream? Well, how would I do that? Well, you've got 80 acres of prime deer hunting ground and turkey hunting ground. You could lease that out for decent money. Well, yeah, I would have no problem with that as long as they have proof of insurance. So then we got, into the game of facilitating hunting leases. And, you're a land broker. You started using this as a tool to find undervalued properties that were getting shortchanged on rent for investors to buy. They were buying them at $200 rent and then buying them and then turning them around, putting them on the platform and renting them out for $370, getting their ROI from 3% to 5.5%.
And what do we call it?
Forced appreciation. We're a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yep.
And that's what's great about this is we're changing an entire multi-trillion-dollar asset class, because if you look at it from a straight real estate perspective and a cap rate perspective, depressed rental values only hurt the asset holders. And the majority of the asset holders are farmers that own farm ground, 50% anyways. And depressed rental rates hurt the actual balance sheet of their operation by suppressing rental rates. It keeps the value of their ground down, where if rental rates double, the value of their ground doubles. Mm-hmm. So we've gone through this whole iteration, but land brokers started using it and using it as a tool to better educate their clients. And then it was, well, if you can do, if your software can facilitate lease auctions, can it facilitate hunting lease auctions? Can it facilitate for sale auctions? And it's like, yeah, we can do all this. So over the last couple of years, our business has really evolved into a different business model of how do we take care of the entire land ecosystem and atmosphere as a whole, using technology, using software, using education, using outreach to really benefit everybody in that entire ecosystem. And that's why, we had to rebrand back in January of this year from just cashrent.com, because it pinned us in a box. That's all we did, to now we do all these different things that really facilitate a wide variety of land transactions that are truly changing the landscape of land.
But it opens up so many doors for people. It just gives them opportunities at, data and resources that just aren't out there readily available. And if they are, you have to really tiptoe through, this portion of the data is helpful to me. I have to pull this from here, and then try to compile everything. And it's just terribly inefficient, which I mean, that's a lot of what we've done here is bring efficiencies to whether it's land brokers' job is in general.
Yeah.
Whether it's, GoPros turning off on their own and making crazy noises like when they power off. We need a new battery in that one, I guess. But
lost a GoPro.
Yeah, regardless. But just breaking this down and putting it into a bundle to where, you don't have to be well-versed in the land space. You don't have to be well-versed in the agricultural space. You don't have to. The fact is, you own the ground, okay? And so I want to be able to offer to all these folks resources, a very, very simple, what's my ground worth?
Absolutely.
Well, here you go. We've had guys a lot smarter than the two of us sitting at this table design and put together algorithms that pull a crazy number of different aspects from all over the place in the agricultural world, and they funnel them all into one that, like, I'm gonna give you everything in one package, and there's nowhere else you can do that.
It's fantastic. And to dovetail off of that, you saying we're not experts in the industry and we're not no, we're not, but we're learning every day. We're learning more about agriculture. We're learning more about land brokerage. We're learning more about farm management. We're learning more about hunting leases. I mean, the going rate for a hunting lease used to be $25 an acre. And if you told them any different, they said, you're nuts. Well, now we're leasing out hunting ground for $50, $60, $70 an acre.
Regional,
so,
yes.
So it's regionally, but, what we're providing is real-time data. And as this evolves, it keeps getting more interesting and more exciting. It went from cashrent.com to CommonGround. Mm-hmm. Now we've got Ground OS, which is really exciting. We're getting ready to onboard hundreds of land brokers. It's our B2B software to allow land brokers across the nation to operate more efficiently, more educated, and service their clients at a much higher level.
Well, I think it's exactly what we talked about, though. That even for a lot of landowners, I believe even if we gave them this tool set, it would still be like a foreign language. And so they're representing land brokers. It's not a foreign language. Like they can pick this apart. Very, very easy to digest. And so we wanted to offer land brokers tools to be able to offer to their clients then. And so it's an additional resource that, in my mind, through all the transactions that I've had over the last 8-9 years, that I think I could do better for my client in the aspect that
you have.
I have proven. But some of the most successful guys in the area here in Central Illinois, whether it's a Don Wagner with land guys, Toby Stay with land guys, Jim Ferguson, Jason Enders, Pat Cox. And so the guys,
Ed Runbarger, Jeff Mahalo.
Yeah, the guys out of Indiana are, they're some of the best. But they're aggressive and they're good at their job already without this.
Yeah.
But to offer them this additional tool set to be able to that this guy's going to do a good job with this. I'm going to give Jeff Mahalik or Chad Rembarger or Andrew Epperson, any of these guys. Here's your tool set.
That's what's crazy.
Go and take this and
they're brokerage of the year 3 years in a row for Mossy Oak Properties.
Huge brokerage.
Huge. And they're the best at what they did. Mm-hmm. Brokerage of the year 3 years in a row.
But which group out of that entire Mossy Oak Properties group, which state has latched onto this the quickest?
It's because they're the best.
They're the best.
And they know the future of land brokerage.
But they were the best before they got with us.
Yeah. And they're like, whoa, we're the best. We see what you're doing here. Like it's literally like if you're a land broker and you are doing business the same way, this is land brokerage on steroids. And they saw that to be like, whoa, we're the best, but this is going to take us to the next level.
Well, and I feel like land brokers now that knowing that this tool is out there, this ground operating system is a resource for brokers. It would be hard for me to believe that a land broker would not capitalize on this opportunity and say, okay, no, I don't really want to offer my clients new resources or help them increase their ROI or make their property more valuable or make the payments simply on the farm much easier.
Yeah.
Like,
cover your taxes.
Are you going to, I mean, like, what land broker in their right mind, in my opinion, is going to be like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Go ahead and let another brokerage.
It's another antiquated industry where people are scared of change. They don't like to adopt technology, but ultimately their predecessor was the same way. They're going to keep doing the same thing just like their predecessor was, but they're going to get passed up by the progressive people that adopt technology and a new tool.
I mean, I believe they're going to lose clients because
they will.
I mean, as soon as land broker Bob decides that, you know, he got this deal closed, great, he walks on, and then a Ground OS broker gets wind that, hey, this farm is bringing $200 an acre. I might reach out to this landowner and just ask him what he's getting. 200 an acre, perfect. Hey, I would like to offer you some data and say, hey, I think you should be getting $340 an acre on this. Would you allow me to represent you? It's not going to cost you, the landowner, anything. It never costs, none of our system in any way, shape, or form cost the landowner a dime. And so brokers who are active and, you know, they're aggressive to the aspect that all they want to do is help the landowners in general. Well, I believe that if you're a land broker or a land brokerage and you don't get on board with this, well, the next broker in your area who is on board, he is probably going to steal your client because anybody can sell ground, in my opinion. Like it's just how it is. But if you can go from selling ground, it's the best of the best. If you go from selling,
utilizing every tool available to service your client.
That's it. And
peak efficiency.
Be a real professional in the land space.
Yes.
Educate yourself.
And you know, we're covering all the bases, and this is our first podcast. Cash Rent, Common Ground, Ground OS, soon coming, which is established, but we'll be talking about this more. CommonGround Insurance Group to really drive value to farmers in the crop insurance industry. You know, what we're doing is changing the landscape of land, and we want this podcast to be fun. We want it to be exciting. I mean, we're not podcast guys. We're just going to sit up here and be real with the audience, tell it straight. We're going to have tough guests. We're going to have tough questions. We're going to get asked tough questions. We're going to have farmers. We're going to have landowners. We're going to have hunting industry experts talking about hunting leases. We're going to have crop insurance guys on here with CommonGround Insurance Group. We're going to have ag and lending professionals.
Commodity brokers.
Lakefront Futures. I mean, we're partnering with them. Some of the best grain marketing people across the country, arguably. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. And I'm just super stoked to be doing my first podcast that I never thought I was ever going to do, but it's actually, I've had fun here today.
It's fun.
And I just want to run through a list of sponsors on this podcast. We actually don't have any right now because it's our first podcast, but I think after this, maybe we can get like LG TV, maybe Hollywood, maybe Red Solo Cup, and maybe Brad can put in a decent word for Copenhagen, and
I do have a cheering problem. I'm not gonna lie.
We'll see how this podcast goes, but really, really thankful, really blessed that we're kicking this off, and just excited to educate, inform, and keep everybody in the loop as this thing progresses. So thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. Yeah, exactly what Chris said. We are just here to learn together with landowners, teach landowners, and it's going to be very, very real life discussions. There's
sometimes hard, sometimes easy, sometimes small.
Nothing scripted, and it's our own opinions from being around this long enough and being within the network that we have, whether they're huge farmers, small farmers, professionals in the hunting industry, farm
Like yourself.
Yeah,
Can we do a podcast where we pay you to
no,
teach the audience how to kill big deer?
probably, yeah. I'm really bad at teaching, and I'm actually even worse in public speaking. So I'm gonna get better here. And but just thank you everyone for joining us. Podcast number 1, Common Ground podcast, and we'll see you all again. Thank you.